Artist Heather Layton splits her time between Chicago, Rochester, and the Adirondack Mountains. We found her right here in Chestertown, New York, on this very cold winter day. Let's head inside and see what she's up to.
If I made a piece of art and it didn't have a story to it or a place to start a discussion, it wouldn't mean anything to me. Like the beauty isn't in the art itself, it's in what happens when somebody looks at it. My practice always has 3 parts to it. It's the making, where I'm making sculpture, installation, painting, and drawing. And then I have the teaching part, where I teach at the University of Rochester. And then I have the relationship building part. And each one of those 3 parts can't exist without the other. The relationship building, that has been really developing relationships with people who are living in different countries, different cultures, different religions. I've been so lucky to participate or be a volunteer in a State Department program called the International Visitor Leadership Program. And through that, I've been able to host creative people from all over the world at our house for dinner, and also then go to travel to their homes and their communities. It's all the positive stories about Saudi Arabia that we never hear, and all the positive stories about Pakistan, and all the stories about Nagaland that I would have had preconceptions or fear in going to these places before I went. And then you get there and people are people everywhere. And so you have these incredible relationships with other artists and community organizers and administrators. I couldn't make art if I didn't have this ongoing exchange with others who are also interested in building bridges between communities and cultures and nations, religions. I couldn't make art and I couldn't teach without making art. And I design all of the projects and all of my classes. I'm thinking through sculpture and through performance when I'm designing the projects. I think I work like I'm writing novels. So there is a conceptual theme throughout my entire, last 25 years of work. But once the series is done, that novel's done. And I don't really often come back to the imagery or to the material or to the story. In 2020 and before, so the 4 years leading up until very recently, I worked on a project called Coping Mechanisms. And I feel at the time it was something that I really needed. Like the last 4 years have been difficult for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. Imagine if there were an unlimited selection of machines, tools, and mechanisms that had the ability to repair relationships, rebuild trust, and correct the record in turbulent political times. If all things were possible, what would people ask for? What would people need? The following are physical manifestations of the hopes and dreams of American citizens. For example, there's the 2-prong stethoscope that allows users to consider what the other is feeling before judging what the other is saying. There are earbuds that fact-check speeches in real time. Shoulder pads with inflatable helium pouches to lift that heavy feeling. An elastic guard that helps prevent damage from excessive tongue biting. A GPS navigation system to steer parents through the process of explaining politics to children, and shoes that keep us from jumping to conclusions. It always starts in writing, and it always starts in thinking. I'll think about a project and do research on a project for a full year before I start making, in many situations. And then I have to visualize, okay, how can this story best be told? My husband Brian had done a lot of research into drone warfare, and we had been told that it is clean technology, that people aren't hurt, until you go to Pakistan. That's where we really learned about it, was on that trip. Then you go back home and you're like, how is this not a major issue? This is before it came out in the news. People are being tormented and their lives just torn apart. So we built this replica of a Predator drone, and I wanted it to be diamond studded, like jewelry. So when you'd walk into the gallery space, it would just glitter. So you just like wanted to be next to it when it was so beautiful. But the idea was if you spent a little more time with it, you would see that it was pointed at a wall-size map of Massachusetts, which is the state where the exhibition took place. And we took the first 341 drone strikes in northern Pakistan and plotted them on a map of that region. And then we just picked up, as if you kept that pattern the same, you pick it up and you swap out a map of Massachusetts underneath and drop the pins again. And then we drove to each one of those sites, a lot of them, and photographed who and what would have been destroyed had a drone strike happened in the United States on that day. And you can see the people who you're about to hit look like you. The current series that I'm working on, I don't have a title for it yet, but it just started in 2021. The theme now is work. It's gonna take a lot of work to bring compassion. It takes a lot of work to make things beautiful. It's never a passive act. So the project I'm currently working on, they are groups of women in particular this time, and they are stitching and mending and pulling and pushing and climbing. In this particular painting series, everybody will be at work. Art is a really fast form of communication. I can be idealistic and optimistic that I'm not always able to do in words. And so a lot of the work I make is like saturated in idealism and optimism. And I think part of that, it's not saying that the violence doesn't exist, it's assuming that the violence is everywhere. The danger is everywhere, the destruction is everywhere. And so the work I make is like, okay, how can we imagine something different? And that I think is where all of the work that I make starts, is in that desire to think that things don't have to be the way they are. There's always a way to live differently and to set up societies differently. The war heroes, the presidents, the CEOs, that's what has been valued, but just as easily you could be in a society that values compassion and collaboration. That's possible if you make it so.